face!
Ah!
You're not gonna do anything.
A pregnant black teenager named Nia Reed becomes the target of relentless racist bullying at her school, where staff and administrators ignore her cries for help to protect wealthy white families like Dylan's, the ringleader of the torment. As the abuse escalates, her father, Marcus Reed, a decorated Delta Force commander, steps in, exposing the cowardice of teachers and the corruption of the principal who dismisses violence as kids being kids. What follows is a tense war of silence, cover-ups, intimidation, and retaliation as the school and community smear Marcus as unstable to protect their own power. Yet Marcus meticulously gathers evidence, turning the system's lies against itself, until the truth explodes into public view, forcing resignations, suspensions, and a reckoning that no one can escape. Across 10 chapters of confrontation, betrayal, and poetic justice, this cinematic story blends raw emotion and suspense to reveal how resilience and truth dismantle the cruelty of systemic racism. The fluorescent lights flickered above the hallway, buzzing faintly like a swarm of insects. Nia Reed moved carefully between rows of lockers, her hands resting instinctively on her belly. 8 months pregnant at 17, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that only seemed to make her classmates sneer louder. "Look at her," a voice whispered from behind. "Baby mama drama, right here in the flesh. She's disgusting," another girl muttered, dragging her mistake around like some badge of honor. The laughter that followed was sharp, rehearsed cruelty. Nia kept walking, her chin high, but her ears burned, her stomach tightened. Every step felt heavier than the last. Near the lockers, 3 figures stepped into her path. Dylan Matthews, varsity football's golden boy, smirked with the confidence of someone who believed rules bent for him. Flanked by his friends, he blocked her way. "Well, if it isn't the star of our school scandal," Dylan said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Tell me, Nia, did you even figure out who the baby daddy is? Or was it just community service?" Laughter erupted from his entourage. Nia's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't answer. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. "Cat, got your tongue," his friend Ashley jeered. "Oh wait, maybe you're saving your breath for Lamar's class." Her silence infuriated them. Dylan leaned closer, his voice lower, crueler. "You think anyone in this school respects you? You're a joke. You're proof of what happens when people like you don't know their place." The word hung there, unspoken but heavy. "People like you." Nia's hand tightened around the strap of her backpack. She wanted to scream, to fight, but the weight of fear pressed her voice down. Finally, she managed, her tone steady. "Move." Dylan chuckled. "Or what you'll call your baby daddy." "Oh wait, he's not around, is he?" The crowd around them grew. Students didn't intervene. They watched, some recorded, hungry for drama. Others looked away, too cowardly to confront what was unfolding. Nia's heart hammered. She could feel her child's shift inside her, as if sensing the storm outside. She tried to push past, but Dylan shoved his arm against the locker, blocking her again. "You really think you belong here, Nia?" he whispered. "This school, this town, it's not built for you." Her throat burned. Still, she didn't break. The bell rang, scattering most of the crowd, but Dylan and his friends lingered. They laughed as she finally managed to slip past them, their words echoing behind her. Trash, pathetic, useless. She walked faster, her eyes stinging. She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone with trembling hands, and pressed speed dial. The call rang once before a deep voice answered Nia. Her breath hitched. "Daddy, I need you." The hallway felt colder, darker. She knew this wasn't over. The afternoon dragged like a weight. Nia kept her eyes low, moving from class to class, but she felt the stares. Whispers swirled at her back like a poisonous wind dot by the final bell. The unease inside her chest had grown into something sharper, heavier. She stepped into the hallway and immediately felt it. The shift. The air thickened. Dylan and his friends were waiting. "Look who decided to show up again," Dylan drawled, leaning against the lockers with his arms folded. His grin was practiced arrogance. Ashley tilted her head, smirking. "You look tired, Nia. Baby slowing you down." "Maybe she's just lazy," another boy added, like the rest of them. The words pierced, cruel in their casualness. Nia tried to move past. Her focus was simple. Get outside, keep breathing, protect her child. But the bullies moved in sync, closing the hallway around her. Dylan's shoulder knocked her. "Not accidental, not gentle." "Oops," he said. "Clumsy me." Nia steadied herself, pressing her palm against her belly. "Don't touch me." Dylan's smirk widened. Or, what? The laughter of his friends swelled, filling the hallway like a chant. Down the corridor, a teacher appeared, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Wallace. She paused for a moment, watching. Nia's eyes flickered with desperate hope, but Mrs. Wallace's expression hardened into something neutral, detached. She adjusted her glasses, turned, and walked away. The message was clear. You're on your own. Ashley stepped closer, her perfume sharp in the air. You think anyone's gonna protect you? Teachers, counselors, please. They know better than to mess with Dylan's family. Nia's lips trembled. She forced them steady. I don't need anyone to protect me. Dylan laughed at that, a cruel, booming sound. Brave words, Nia, but let's be real. You're just another statistic waiting to happen. He shoved her again, harder, this time. Her back slammed into the lockers with a metallic clang. Her breath caught, her arms flying instinctively around her stomach. Stop, she snapped, her voice louder than before, breaking the silence of the hallway. For a moment, everything froze. The other students standing nearby glanced over, but none moved. Some smirked, others lifted their phones, screens glowing like eyes in the shadows. Ashley leaned in, her voice venomous. You think anyone cares about your little outburst? You're nothing here, nothing. The crowd murmured, a tide of complicity. Some averted their gaze, but nobody intervened. Nia pushed herself off the locker, breathing hard. Her body shook, but her voice steadied. You don't get to decide what I am. Dylan's grin faltered, just for a second. Then his anger surged, quick and hot. You're right, I don't. But I can show you what happens when you forget your place. He stepped forward, his chest puffed out with dominance. His friends circled closer. The crowd whispered, restless, hungry for escalation. A boy in the back muttered, they're gonna do it. They're really gonna mess her up. Another girl whispered, she should have kept her mouth shut. Nia's throat tightened. She could feel the walls closing in, the danger pressing closer. Her pulse thundered. Her baby shifted again, reminding her of what she had to protect. The teacher reappeared at the far end of the hall, the same Mrs. Wallace. She caught sight of the gathering, her eyes briefly meeting Nia's. Then, with an almost imperceptible shake of her head, she turned into another classroom, shutting the door behind her. The silence of authority was louder than any slur. Ashley smiled coldly. After school, Nia, don't run. We've got a lesson planned for you. The bell rang, loud and final. Students scattered, the crowd thinning, but Dylan lingered long enough to whisper one last promise in her ear. You won't walk away tomorrow. Nia's breath shook as she turned toward the exit, her hands pressed firmly against her belly. She walked fast, every nerve screaming. The storm was no longer coming. It was already here. The counselor's office smelled faintly of coffee and stale carpet. Nia sat on the edge of the chair, her hands locked together, knuckles pale. Her voice shook as she spoke. They shoved me against the lockers. They said they're coming after me after school. Mr. Keller, the guidance counselor, leaned back in his chair. His expression was one of polite patience, but his eyes slid past her, like he was already tired. Well, Nia, he began slowly. High school kids say a lot of things they don't mean. Sometimes, it's better not to give them the reaction they're looking for. Nia blinked. They pushed me, in front of everyone. Mr. Keller's smile tightened, professional but detached. And did you provoke them in any way? Her jaw clenched. I was walking to class. A silence followed. The hum of the air vent filled it, louder than words. You have to understand, Keller finally said, his voice dropping to something conspiratorial. Dylan's family is very respected here. His father is on the school board. His mother organizes most of the fundraising events. They have a lot of influence. Nia's stomach turned. So because they have money, I don't matter. That's not what I'm saying. He folded his hands. I'm saying, maybe if you kept a lower profile, avoided conflict, things would cool down. Her eyes burned. Lower profile. I'm pregnant, Mr. Keller. I can't disappear. The counselor sighed, looking at the papers on his desk as if they suddenly required his urgent attention. I understand this is difficult for you. I really do, but my advice is to stay out of their way. Finish the year quietly. After that, you won't even have to see them again. Her voice dropped to a whisper, sharp as broken glass. So, I just take it. Let them shove me, threaten me, humiliate me. He didn't answer. Nia stood, her chair scraping against the carpet. The sound cut through the room like a blade. Thank you for nothing, she said flatly, as she walked out. She heard his parting words. Nia, don't make things harder for yourself. The hallway outside felt colder than before. Students leaned against lockers, phones in hand. She caught fragments of their whispers. She went crying to the counselor. Won't matter. Everyone knows Dylan runs this place. She should have thought before getting knocked up. Her throat tightened, but she kept walking. Each whisper was another knife, twisting deeper. At her locker, she found something taped to the door, a crude drawing, mocking her belly, with the words, School Mascot 2.0 scrawled beneath it. Laughter echoed nearby. Nia ripped the paper down, her hands trembling. She shoved it into her bag, her breath sharp and ragged. The final bell rang. Students streamed toward the exits. Outside, the sun was sinking, painting the sky in bruised shades of orange and red. Her phone buzzed, a notification. She unlocked it and froze. On social media, a photo of her at the lockers, clutching her stomach, was circulating. The caption read, "When welfare becomes a fashion statement," comments multiplied beneath it. Cruel, relentless. Who even let her in this school? That kid's gonna be born a dropout. She should be sterilized. Her chest constricted. She turned off the screen, her reflection in the black glass, staring back at her tired eyes. Trembling lips, resolve, barely holding. The school doors opened. Dylan and his crew spilled out, their laughter loud, their voices sharp. "There she is," Dylan called, his eyes locked on her, his grin spreading. The crowd around him buzzed with anticipation. Phones rose again. Nia's pulse quickened. The storm was waiting just outside, and she knew the system inside these walls had already abandoned her. The parking lot smelled of gasoline and hot asphalt, the last light of the sun bleeding into dusk. Nia walked quickly, her bag slung over her shoulder, one hand cradling her stomach. Her phone was clenched tight in her palm, ready to call her father again. She heard them before she saw them. Laughter, mocking whistles, the scuff of sneakers against pavement. Well, Dylan's voice rang out, smug and cold. "Didn't think you'd make it out here alone." Nia froze, her pulse pounded in her ears. Ashley appeared first, stepping into her path with a smirk. "Guess she didn't take Mr. Keller's advice about keeping a low profile." "Don't," Nia said firmly, though her voice trembled. "Leave me alone." Dylan and his friends circled around, boxing her in. The crowd was smaller than before, but more focused. Phones lit the air like torches. Dylan tilted his head. "You don't get to tell us what to do. Your entertainment." His friend Jake chuckled. "Look at her, waddling around like a joke." Ashley folded her arms. "Bet she doesn't even know who the dad is. Probably doesn't matter. Kid'll come out worthless, either way." The words cut sharper than knives. Nia's breath shook, but she forced herself to stand tall. "Say whatever you want. I'm not scared of you." Dylan's grin widened. "You should be." He shoved her shoulder, harder than before. She staggered, her arm shooting out to steady herself. Instinctively, she curled around her stomach, her body forming a shield. The crowd gasped. Some laughed nervously. Others whispered. Nobody stepped forward. "Stop it." Nia's voice cracked. "I said stop." Ashley stepped closer, her eyes cold. "No one's gonna stop us. Not the teachers. Not the school. Not your daddy, wherever he is. You're nothing here." Nia's chest heaved. Her throat burned with fury. "You don't get to decide what I am." Jake barked a laugh. "Keep talking, girl. Let's see how tough you are when you're on the ground." Dylan moved in. His hand grabbed her wrist, squeezing hard enough to make her flinch. He leaned in close, his breath hot and sour. "Here's the truth," he whispered. "You don't belong here. You never did, and we're gonna make sure you never forget it." He yanked her forward, and she stumbled. The world tilted, her vision blurring as panic surged. She twisted, trying to pull free, but his grip only tightened. "Let me go," she shouted, voice breaking. The crowd murmured, restless, but still no one intervened. Phones kept recording. The glow of their screens lit the circle like a stage. Ashley's voice rose, sharp with glee. "Careful, Dylan. Don't hit the baby. We don't want that on camera." Laughter erupted. Nia's breath came fast and shallow. The edge of the curb loomed behind her. One push, one slip. Disaster. Her heart thundered. Her baby shifted inside her, and terror clawed at her chest. She could feel tears burning at the edges of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Dylan raised his fist. The crowd leaned in. The air shifted. A voice, deep and commanding, cut through the chaos. "Let her go." Everything froze. Dylan turned, startled. The crowd parted slightly, eyes widening. Colonel Marcus Reed stepped forward, his presence filling the space like a storm rolling in. His posture was straight, his gaze cold, his jaw set. Even out of uniform, his aura radiated authority, the kind that couldn't be faked. Dad. Nia's voice cracked, relief flooding her face. Marcus's eyes never left Dylan. Release her now. For a heartbeat. Dylan hesitated, his bravado faltering. But the presence of an audience, the phones, the eyes, pushed him to mask his fear. He sneered. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Marcus took another step forward. The man who will end this. Let her go. The weight of his tone silenced even the laughter. Dylan's grip loosened, almost involuntarily. Nia tore her arm free, stumbling back toward her father. His hand steadied her, firm but gentle, guiding her behind him. Marcus squared his shoulders, his gaze locked on the bullies. His voice dropped lower, controlled, lethal in its calm. You think you're strong, ganging up on a pregnant girl. You've never faced strength in your lives. You don't know what it looks like. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the crowd lowered their phones, uneasy. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Look at me, boy. This ends now. For the first time, Dylan's smirk faltered, his fists clenched at his sides, his bravado cracking under the weight of authority he couldn't match. Nia clung to her father's arm, her breath ragged. The storm had shifted. The hunters had just met something far more dangerous than themselves. The parking lot. Moments ago, a stage for cruelty, had gone silent. Phones hung limp at students' sides. Even the bullies, so sure of their dominance, faltered under the weight of Marcus Reed's presence. He didn't shout, he didn't posture. His voice carried the controlled gravity of a man who had commanded soldiers in combat. Step back, Marcus said evenly. Jake tried to laugh, though it rang hollow. Man, relax, we were just messing around. Marcus's gaze cut to him, pushing a pregnant girl against lockers, grabbing her wrist, threatening her life. That's your idea of messing around. No one spoke. Dylan tried to recover, lifting his chin. She's lying. Everyone here saw. Everyone here, Marcus interrupted, his tone razor sharp, saw exactly what you did. Don't insult their eyes, or my intelligence. His posture remained still, but the tension in the air thickened. Every student could feel it. The aura of discipline, of command, of someone who didn't bluff. Ashley scoffed, but her voice trembled. You can't just walk in here and start accusing people. Who even are you? Marcus's eyes slid to her. I am her father. Nia stood close, her hand gripping his arm, her breathing slowed, steadied by the wall of protection he embodied. Dylan smirked again, desperate to salvage his pride. So what? You think you can scare us off just because you're, what, some tough guy? Marcus stepped closer, his boots firm on the asphalt. His shadow stretched across Dylan, swallowing his bravado. I don't need to scare you, Marcus said calmly. You've already shown me exactly who you are. Cowards, pack hunters, boys who mistake cruelty for strength. The words sliced through the group. Their laughter was gone. The crowd of students murmured, restless. A boy whispered, he's not wrong. Another muttered. Dylan looked shook. Dylan's jaw tightened. You don't know who you're talking to. My dad's, your father's influence doesn't matter to me, Marcus cut in. His tone was quiet, yet unyielding. I've stood across from men who thought power could shield them. Men with armies. Men with blood on their hands. Do you know where they are now? The silence pressed harder. Dylan's lips parted, but no sound came. Marcus leaned slightly closer, his eyes never blinking. Buried, because arrogance doesn't protect you when truth and discipline stand against you. The crowd rippled with unease. Even the students holding their phones lowered them, realizing this wasn't entertainment anymore, it was reckoning. Ashley finally broke the silence, her voice small. Come on, Dylan, let's just go. Dylan's pride screamed against retreat, but the weight of Marcus's gaze pinned him in place, his fists unclenched, his bravado crumbling. Fine, he muttered. This isn't over. Marcus's voice followed him like a blade. Yes, it is. The bullies backed away, the circle breaking. One by one, the crowd dispersed, their whispers carrying the shift in power. Nia's breath trembled as she looked up at her father. His eyes softened as they met hers. You, okay? He asked quietly. She nodded, though her voice wavered. They would have hurt me. His jaw tightened. He pulled her close, his arm a fortress around her shoulders. Not while I breathe. For a moment, the parking lot was just the two of them, father and daughter, survivor and protector. But Marcus's eyes tracked the retreating figures of the bullies, his instincts sharpening. This wasn't over. He knew it. Their humiliation tonight would only feed their retaliation tomorrow. And worse, the system that should have protected Nia, the teachers, the counselor, the school board, was already aligned against her. Marcus's mind shifted into combat rhythm. Observe, anticipate, counter. He wasn't on a battlefield, but the tactics were the same. This wasn't just about bullies, it was about the sickness that let them thrive, and he intended to dismantle it piece by piece. The commander in him had stepped into the fight. Morning sunlight spilled across the school, bright and sharp, but the air felt heavy. Rumors had already spread like wildfire. Students whispered about the confrontation in the parking lot, some with awe, others with ridicule. Phones buzzed with shaky recordings of Marcus Reed's arrival, his commanding presence, Dylan's faltering bravado, Naya clinging to her father's arm. But in classrooms and offices, the story was retold differently. Colonel Reed intimidated those kids, one teacher murmured in the lounge, scared them half to death. No wonder they're shaken. He shouldn't even have been on school property, another added. It's inappropriate. By the time Marcus dropped Naya off that morning, the narrative had already shifted. Inside the main office, Marcus stood tall before Principal Hensley. The man's voice was calm, oily, rehearsed. Mr. Reed, we're grateful for your service to the country, but yesterday's incident has caused considerable disruption. Marcus's jaw tightened. Disruption. My daughter was assaulted in your hallway, in your parking lot. Your staff stood by and did nothing. That's the disruption. Hensley cleared his throat, his hands folded neatly on the desk. We've spoken with Dylan's parents. They're very concerned about the accusations. They insist this was a misunderstanding, just teenagers being teenagers. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Teenagers being teenagers. Don't shove a pregnant girl into lockers. Don't grab her wrist. Don't threaten her life. The principal hesitated. His eyes flicked to the file on his desk. Colonel Reed, Dylan's family has contributed generously to this school. They're respected members of this community. I can't take drastic action without clear evidence. Marcus's voice dropped, cold and precise. You had evidence. An entire hallway of witnesses. Teachers who watched and walked away. Hensley shifted in his chair. I'll remind you, sir, raising your voice at me won't help your daughter's case. Marcus leaned forward, his words measured, lethal in calmness. If my daughter bleeds on your watch, no case will save you. The principal's throat bobbed. He quickly glanced at the door, lowering his voice. I suggest we let this incident pass quietly. It would be best for everyone involved. Marcus straightened, disgust etched across his face. Best for whom? My daughter or your donors? The silence that followed was answer enough. Down the hall, Naya sat in the cafeteria, staring at her untouched tray. Conversations rippled around her, loud enough for her to hear. Dylan's dad said the colonel threatened him. Yeah, I heard he's unstable, PTSD or something. Honestly, Naya brings it on herself, always walking around like she's better than everyone. She clenched her fists under the table, her nails digging into her palms. A girl slid past, whispering just loud enough, if she wants attention, she's getting it. Laughter followed. Nia's chest tightened. The humiliation wasn't just from the bullies anymore. It was baked into the walls, the teachers, the silence of everyone who knew the truth but chose comfort over justice. That night, Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his laptop open, files spread across the surface. Naya hovered nearby, watching him. What are you doing? She asked softly. His fingers moved with military precision, gathering evidence. He pulled up the videos circulating online, grainy, shaky footage of Dylan's group surrounding Nia, of his hand gripping her wrist, of Marcus stepping in. Not enough, he muttered. They'll claim it's out of context. They'll twist it. He opened another file, screenshots of the cruel social media posts, comments dripping with racism, threats masked as jokes. Nia's voice trembled. Dad, they'll just deny it. They always do. Marcus looked up at her, his eyes steady. Then we make denial impossible. He tapped the screen. Every word, every image, every silence from the staff. We document it all. We build a record so airtight, the truth strangles their lies. Naya swallowed hard, her chest tight with a mix of fear and hope. Dad, what if they come after you? He paused, then closed the laptop slowly. His hand covered hers, firm and grounding. They already have, but I've fought worse enemies than spoiled children and corrupt administrators, and I don't lose. For the first time that day, Naya allowed herself a shaky smile. Outside, the night pressed against the windows. Inside, Marcus Reed mapped the next phase of his war, not with rifles or squads, but with truth as his weapon. The bullies thought their silence was protection. They hadn't met a man trained to dismantle entire systems built on lies. The Reed household awoke to silence, not the peaceful kind, but the brittle quiet of a battlefield before the first shot. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly on the counter. News alerts, emails, a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. He ignored them until one came through marked restricted. He answered. A clipped male voice. Colonel Reed, this is a courtesy call. For your daughter's sake, drop your complaints. You're making the wrong people uncomfortable. Marcus didn't reply. He simply listened. The caller continued. We know your record. We know your temper. One story in the wrong outlet, and you'll be painted as unstable, dangerous. Think about your family. The line went dead. At school, the walls tightened further. Teachers who once smiled at Nia now looked past her, avoiding her eyes. Her locker had been vandalized again. This time not just slurs, but a printed photo of her face crossed out in red marker. She stood there, frozen, when Dylan sauntered past with two of his friends. Careful, Reed, he said under his breath. Wouldn't want Daddy's career to go down the drain because of you. Nia turned, fire sparking in her chest. You're a coward. His smirk faltered for a split second before snapping back. Funny, that's what they'll be saying about your old man when the papers run their stories. That afternoon, Marcus was summoned to the district superintendent's office. He arrived in uniform, deliberate, calculated. The secretary stiffened when she saw the decorations on his chest. Inside, Superintendent Keller sat waiting, flanked by two board members. They smiled too quickly, their eyes sharp. Colonel Reed, Keller began smoothly, thank you for coming. We wanted to discuss a resolution to this ongoing situation. Marcus didn't sit. The resolution is simple. Protect my daughter. Discipline the students who assaulted her. Hold your staff accountable. One board member, a tall woman with polished nails, leaned forward. Colonel, we're sympathetic, but your recent confrontations have made matters difficult. There's concern about the safety of having you on campus. Marcus let the words hang. Safety? Yes, Keller said. We've received complaints. Parents feel intimidated. Some claim you threatened Dylan. Marcus's eyes darkened. I didn't threaten him. I warned him. There's a difference. The tall woman clasped her hands. Be that as it may, the narrative spreading right now paints you as unstable. If it continues, it could harm your reputation, even your military standing. Marcus stepped closer to the desk, his voice low and lethal. My reputation was built in blood and service to a country that taught me never to back down from bullies, foreign or domestic. Don't think for 1 second I'll let you trade my daughter's dignity for donations. The silence was thick. Keller's smile faltered. You should reconsider your approach, Colonel. Sometimes, compromise is the only way forward. Marcus leaned forward just enough for them to feel the weight of his presence. Compromise is how injustice breathes. I don't compromise. That evening, Nia sat with her father at the dining table again. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through her phone. Dad, they're posting about you. She showed him the screen. A local blog headline blared, Delta Force commander threatens students, puts school at risk. Beneath it, comments piled up. He's dangerous. No wonder his daughter acts out. This family doesn't belong here. Nia's throat tightened. They're turning you into the villain. Marcus took the phone and set it aside. That's what power does when it's cornered. It shifts the spotlight. But what if he cut her off gently? No, what if? We keep going. We make their lies collapse under the weight of truth. Nia swallowed, her fear battling against the steel in his voice. What if truth isn't enough? Marcus looked at her, his eyes steady. Then we make it enough. The following day, the war shifted again. Marcus arrived at the school to find two police officers waiting by the entrance. One stepped forward, hand resting casually on his belt. Colonel Reed, we've been asked to remind you, this is private property. You can't be here unless it's official school business. Marcus met his stare. Picking up my daughter is official business. The officer's jaw tightened. Don't cause trouble, sir. We'd hate to escalate. Nia watched from the doors, her stomach twisting. The sight of her father, a man who had survived war, being treated like a criminal for protecting her, it carved deep into her. When Marcus finally walked her to the car, Nia whispered, "They're trying to break you." His reply was quiet, but unshakable. "They can't. They'll break themselves first." That night, Marcus gathered Nia and Angela in the living room. His laptop glowed, filled with folders of meticulously organized evidence. "We're past quiet complaints," he said. "This is systemic, and systemic rot requires exposure." Angela frowned, worry etched in her face. Exposure means risk. They'll come harder. Marcus nodded. Then let them. Every move they make, every lie they tell, it adds to their downfall. I've faced fire before. This is no different. Nia's voice was barely a whisper. Dad, what if they win? Marcus looked at his daughter, his hand firm on her shoulder. They won't, because I don't fight to win. I fight to make sure evil loses. The weight of his words filled the room. For the first time, Nia believed him. The war was no longer just whispers in hallways or smirks from Dylan. It was the system itself, and Marcus Reed was preparing to strike it where it hurt most. The town awoke to headlines. Local news anchors, reading with bright plastic smiles, framed the story as though Marcus Reed was the problem. Decorated soldier oversteps at school, community voices concerned, parent accused of intimidating students after daughter's dispute. The language was careful, sanitized, but the implication was loud. At the breakfast table, Angela slammed her coffee mug down. They've flipped it. They've turned you into the aggressor. Marcus scanned the articles without a flicker of emotion. His face was stone, but Nia noticed the faint tension in his jaw. Good, he finally said. It means they're scared. Angela stared at him. Scared. They're shaping the narrative. If this sticks, Marcus cut her off. Then, we fight louder. Truth doesn't whisper. It roars. At school, the whispers had transformed into stares. Every step Nia took through the hallway was followed by murmurs. Some students looked at her with pity, others with contempt. Dylan's circle thrived in the noise. During lunch, Dylan stood up in the cafeteria, projecting his voice so everyone could hear. Hey, Reed, he called, smirking. Tell your dad thanks for the publicity. My family's lawyer says he'll be out of uniform soon. Laughter rippled across the room. Nia's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Heat burned through her chest. She rose slowly, her voice sharp, clear, unshaken. You think this is funny? You think destroying people's lives makes you powerful? All it makes you is pitiful. The cafeteria hushed. Dylan's smirk faltered, but only for a breath. He stepped closer. Careful, Reed. You don't want to push me. People already think your dad's dangerous. Maybe they'll start thinking the same about you. Nia stared him down. Her voice cut through the silence. Dangerous isn't the one who fights back. Dangerous is the coward who hides behind his daddy's money. Gasps echoed. Dylan's face flushed, rage sparking in his eyes. But he didn't strike. Not this time. He just leaned close enough to whisper, "You're going to regret that." That evening, Marcus received an email marked confidential. The subject line, Employment Review Notice. He read in silence. His commanding officer, under pressure from community concerns, had scheduled a review of his conduct. His military career, decades of service, sacrifice, scars, was suddenly in question because he had defended his child. Angela's voice shook as she read over his shoulder. They're coming for your life's work. Marcus closed the laptop calmly. Then I'll show them what my life's work truly is. Later that night, the Reed home shook under a different kind of weight. A brick shattered their living room window, glass spraying across the floor. Attached was a note scrawled in red marker. Leave before it gets worse. Angela gasped. Nia stood frozen, the sound of her heartbeat filling her ears. Marcus picked up the brick, studying it like evidence on a battlefield. He set it down on the table with deliberate care. They've moved from threats to action, he said quietly. That's their mistake. The next day, Marcus walked into the school unannounced. His uniform was gone. He wore plain clothes, but his presence still commanded the room. Students and staff alike turned as he strode through the halls. A storm contained within human form. He stopped outside Principal Hensley's office. The secretary stammered, "SRO, you can't go in," without the door opened under Marcus's hand. Inside, Hensley looked up, startled. "Colonel, not Colonel," Marcus interrupted. "Father." He laid the shattered brick on the desk. Shards of glass still clung to it. "This is what your silence bred. Your refusal to protect my daughter invited this." Hensley's face paled. I had no knowledge of this. We can't control. You control what you choose to control," Marcus cut in. His voice was calm, but the weight of it pressed like iron. "You let the bullies run unchecked because their parents write checks. You let teachers stand idle because their tenure shields them. And you tell yourself you're neutral. But neutrality is complicity," Hensley stammered. I'll look into this." Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping. "You'll do more than look. You'll act, because if you don't, every failure, every silence, every cowardly compromise will be dragged into the light, and you will answer for it." The principal's hands trembled on the desk. That night, Nia sat beside her father in the living room, the broken window covered by a board dot. She whispered, "Why don't we just leave? Move somewhere else. Start over." Marcus turned to her, his eyes fierce but tender. "Because leaving teaches them they can drive us out. Staying shows them their cruelty has no power. But what if they hurt us again?" He pulled her close, his voice steady as bedrock. "Then we endure, and in enduring, we win." For the first time, Nia didn't just hear his words, she believed them. The system was cracking, the walls were closing in, and Marcus Reed was ready to push back until they shattered. The morning air carried a charge, as if the whole town was holding its breath. Marcus sat at the dining table, the laptop screen glowing before him. Every file, every screenshot, every shaky phone video was organized into a single dossier, a weapon sharper than any blade he had carried in combat. Angela hovered nearby, worry etched deep into her face. "Once you send this, there's no going back." Marcus didn't look up. That's the point. He hit upload. The files traveled across servers, landing in the inboxes of journalists, advocacy groups, civil rights attorneys. Within minutes, responses began trickling in. One headline went live before breakfast was finished. Delta Force commander exposes systemic racism and abuse in local school. At school, the atmosphere shifted violently. Teachers whispered in corners. Students scrolled through their phones with wide eyes. Screens lit up with clips of Dylan grabbing Nia, the principal ignoring complaints. Staff walking past slurs carved into lockers. In the cafeteria, a group huddled around the phone. "Yo, this is everywhere. Look, even national outlets are picking it up. They're saying the school covered it up." Dylan slammed his tray down, fury flashing across his face. "It's all lies. My dad's already on it. You'll see." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Principal Hensley's office was chaos. Calls flooded in parents demanded answers. Reporters camped outside the school gates. "We need a statement," one board member hissed over the speakerphone. "A statement won't stop this," another snapped. "This is bigger than us now." Hensley's face was pale, sweat clinging to his temples. He stared at the grainy video of Nia being shoved into a locker, her hand cradling her stomach, Dylan smirking in the background. The image froze there, damning and undeniable. His phone buzzed again. This time, the caller ID read, "State Education Office." His hand shook as he picked up. That evening, the Reed home became a fortress of ringing phones. Civil rights groups offered legal aid. Journalists requested interviews. Former students began reaching out, sharing their own stories of racism and neglect at the same school. Angela looked overwhelmed, but Marcus's expression never shifted from steady resolve. "This isn't about us anymore," he said quietly. "This is about every voice they tried to silence." Nia sat on the couch, scrolling through messages. Some were supportive, others, "Venomous dad. Some people still think we're lying. They're calling me names, saying, we're doing this for attention." Marcus knelt in front of her, his hand on her shoulder. "Truth always meets resistance. Lies fight hardest when they're dying." Nia blinked back tears. "But it hurts." His voice softened. "That's because you care. And caring is strength, not weakness." The next day, Marcus escorted Nia to school. This time, cameras clicked as they walked through the gates. Reporters shouted questions. "Colonel Reed, do you stand by your accusations? Is your daughter safe at this school? Do you believe the administration should resign?" Marcus didn't slow his stride. He answered only once, his voice carrying like a command. "My daughter is not the first. She will be the last." The words rippled across every microphone, every broadcast. Inside the school, Dylan tried to reclaim his stage. He stood in the hallway, his voice raised for all to hear. "This is all fake. Everyone knows the Reeds are just trying to make themselves look like victims." But the crowd didn't laugh this time. No smirks, no chuckles, just silence. A student near the lockers muttered, "I saw it happen. He's lying." Another added, "My cousin dropped out last year because of the same crap." Nobody listened then either. Dylan's face twisted, his confidence crumbling. For the first time, the shield of silence around him cracked. That night, Marcus sat alone on the porch, the quiet broken only by crickets. His phone buzzed again, a message from a retired comrade. "Saw the news. You're doing the right thing. Don't stop." Marcus exhaled slowly. The battlefield was different now. No sand, no rifles, no uniform. But the mission was the same. Protect the innocent, dismantle the corrupt. stand unbroken. Behind him. The door creaked open. Nia stepped outside, her face lit faintly by the porch light. She whispered, "Dad, thank you." Marcus turned, his expression unreadable, but his voice held a rare gentleness. For what? For not letting them win. He reached out, pulling her into a steady embrace. They never had a chance. The school board meeting was packed beyond capacity. Parents, students, teachers, reporters, all crammed into the auditorium. The air hot with tension. Cameras pointed toward the stage, where Principal Hensley, Superintendent Keller, and several board members sat stiffly under the weight of the crowd's eyes. Marcus Reed stood near the back, arms crossed, his presence unmistakable even in silence. Nia sat beside Angela, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The board chair cleared his throat into the microphone. "We are here to address recent allegations concerning misconduct and racial harassment at Brookside High School. We ask for civility as we proceed." The crowd erupted instantly. Voices rose, angry, insistent. "Protect our kids. Stop the resign." The chair slammed the gavel. But the noise only barely dimmed. The first testimony came from a former student, her voice trembling but strong. "I reported harassment 3 years ago. Nothing happened. I was told I was exaggerating." Another followed. "My son was bullied for months. Teachers ignored him. We finally pulled him out." Each voice built on the last, a tidal wave of truth crashing against the stage. Then came Nia's turn. She walked to the microphone, her back straight, though her hands shook. For a moment, the crowd hushed. "My name is Nia Reed," she began. Her voice wavered, then steadied. "I'm 17. I'm also pregnant. And every day for months, I've walked into a building where students shoved me, mocked me, called me names. Teachers saw it. They looked away. Administrators brushed it aside." Her eyes swept the stage, landing squarely on Hensley. "When my father stepped in, not to attack, but to protect me, the narrative flipped. Suddenly, we were the problem. We were dangerous. Because it's easier to paint the victim's family as unstable than to admit the system failed." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Nia's voice sharpened. "You tried to silence me, but silence isn't safety. Silence is betrayal, and I won't be silent anymore." The applause was thunderous, rising to a roar. Superintendent Keller leaned into his microphone, his face pale. "Miss Reed, while we appreciate your perspective, Marcus's voice cut through the room like steel. He had moved forward, his presence commanding the space. "This isn't perspective. This is evidence. Evidence you ignored. Evidence you buried. And now, the entire country is watching." Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashing. Keller shifted uncomfortably, beads of sweat on his forehead. The breaking point came when one of the board members, visibly shaken, turned her microphone on. "I can't sit here and pretend anymore. I've seen the complaints. I've seen how they were dismissed. Principal Hensley, you've covered 4 students because of who their parents are. Superintendent Keller, you've pressured staff into silence. Enough is enough." Gasps filled the room. Hensley's face reddened, his voice cracking. "This is outrageous. I've dedicated my career to this school, and in doing so," Marcus interrupted, "you've sacrificed the safety of the very children you swore to protect." The auditorium erupted again, chants now, voices rising together. "Resign, resign." By the end of the night, the board had no choice. Under the relentless pressure of testimony, evidence, and public outrage, both Hensley and Keller announced their resignations, effective immediately. Dillon and his accomplices were suspended pending investigation. Civil suits loomed. The silence that had shielded them for years had finally shattered. Outside, the crowd spilled into the night air, buzzing with the electricity of justice. Reporters swarmed Marcus, but he said little. His work, for now, was done. Nia walked beside him, lighter than she had felt in months. She whispered, almost to herself, "It's over." Marcus looked down at her, his voice low, steady. "No. It's not over. It's a beginning." Angela slipped her arm around Nia's shoulders. "But tonight," she said softly, "we breathe." Days later, the media frenzy began to quiet, replaced by the slow, grinding gears of reform. Investigations were launched, policies rewritten. Teachers who had once looked away now faced accountability. For Nia, the halls of Brookside still felt scarred, but no longer suffocating. Students who had once whispered now walked with her, some offering shy nods of respect. Dillon, once untouchable, sat alone at a corner table. His empire of fear crumbled. The smirk was gone. replaced by the hollow stare of someone learning what consequence felt like. One evening, Marcus stood on the porch again, watching the sunset. Naya joined him, resting her head lightly against his arm. "They called you dangerous," she said quietly. "They tried to destroy you." Marcus's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. They mistook silence for safety, and they learned the cost. Naya smiled faintly, tears stinging her eyes. "You never let them break me." He finally looked at her, his voice as steady as ever. "I never will." The sun dipped low, painting the sky in fire. The war wasn't over, not for Marcus, not for Naya, not for countless others. But in that moment, father and daughter stood together, unbroken, living proof that truth, once unleashed, could never be caged again.